Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Josh Toso, and thanks again for joining in and welcome back to the Starboard Portal. We have a great presentation today from RS Sailing CEO John Partridge, North American rep Todd Riccardi, help you learn how to inspire participation with new innovative boats. Thanks, John and Todd, for joining us today, and thank you to all the viewers for tuning in and those of you who watch this presentation on playback at some point later. If you want to learn, see more of these great new boats and about what RS Sailing is doing, head over to rssailing.com to learn more after this presentation. And if you enjoyed today's session or any of the other sessions that we put on, please support our efforts to build a community of active, engaged sailors through the Starboard Portal by purchasing or renewing US Sailing membership. We have a lot of great content coming up in the schedule, and thanks to US Sailing members, we're able to adapt and evolve to better serve sailors with content like this. Please visit ussailing.org/membership to join or renew your US Sailing membership today. Thanks again for joining us all today. And we have some great guests here. And if you'll notice on the right side of your screen, there's a chat bar and a comment section with our YouTube Live. And please feel free to put in any questions that you have for John or Todd into that bar. And we'll hit those questions towards the end of the presentation and be able to answer them live for you. And remember, down below into the description section is a link for US Sailing membership and a little description of this, this presentation as well. And if you miss any portion of this presentation, it will be uploaded automatically at the end onto the Starboard Portal. So please visit ussailing.org/starboard-portal to check out this presentation afterwards or any of the other great content that we have. For now, I'd like to turn it over to RS Sailing CEO John Partridge and North American rep Todd Riccardi. Guys, thanks for joining us. Off to you.
Thanks, Josh. So my name is John Partridge. I'm the CEO of RS Sailing. For those who don't know me, I've been there for over 20 years. I started in 1999 at the very bottom of RS, packing parcels in the mail order dispatch department, and over time worked my way up through the company. Had the utter privilege to be involved with all sorts of parts of our industry and within our sport, and small events, big programs, small programs. For the US, we work with Todd. Todd will quickly introduce himself.
Yeah, hi everybody. My name is Todd Riccardi. I've been in the marine industry here for about 12 years. I was fortunate enough to go to Roger Williams University, go Hawks, home of US Sailing currently. We got a few other Hawks that work with US Sailing. Luckily enough, Vanguard Sailboats was right across the bridge. I started working there, became Laser Performance, and then I got out of the sailboat industry for a few years, and then I came across RS and was really shocked by how much they cared about sailing and wanted to grow the market and just be unique and really give back to the sport. So I chose to get back involved with small boats, and I've been with them for over 5 years now. And the best decision I ever made. Super happy to be involved and super happy to be here to be talking about that.
Thanks, Todd. So a bit of background about RS. We are well over 25 years old. We started in the mid-90s, early to mid-90s, when a few guys sat around and had an idea about a range of boats that would be different and try and fill gaps in the marketplace and have a different outlook and try and build some community. RS is over 50% of RS is owned with the internal staff team. And in fact, all of our shareholders are sailors of some description, which we think is important because ultimately, if you don't love what you do, this industry is pretty tough. So I guess a global issue, not just a US one or a UK one, is the perception that dinghy sailing is dying. We all know it's not as big as it was in the 80s. But I think Todd and I have the experience of working with many programs and amazing clubs around both the US and the wider world who are doing amazing things to keep our sport invigorated and actually breathe life into it with programs, as an example, such as the Seaboard Sailors program. And we just want to talk a little bit this afternoon around our RS philosophy, why we believe equipment which is a heavily equipment-based sport, is important, and how we believe it can help us grow our sport and mainly attract more people into it. So we certainly don't believe dinghy sailing isn't dead. We believe in lifestyle. We believe we're selling more than just a sport. Sailing is about making friends for life. It's about experiences. It's a lifestyle. Sailing takes place in different forms, in different types, all around the world. Whether, unlike other sports where it's quite one-dimensional, sailing, you can do it by yourself, you can do it as a team, you can do it on a small boat, you can do it on a big boat, you can cruise, you can learn, you can race. There's so much to it, and therefore we very much view it internally as a lifestyle.
And one thing we believe in very strongly is the accessibility of it. And accessibility is a word that may be hard to understand. Honestly, we have a hard time understanding it sometimes. But what we mean by it is that the sport needs to be easy to get into. We need to break down barriers to get into the sport. And a lot of times that's providing equipment. On the left here, we have the RS FIVA, which has provided a really great opportunity for sailors between ages 10 and 15 to get into a boat that's more suitable for their size, more user-friendly and fun. To the right, we have the RS 21, which is a very user-friendly keel boat, affordable price, great for clubs. And we believe in things like the pay-to-play model, which some of you may have heard, that you can have a fleet of boats ready to go, and someone, a millennial in their 20s or 30s, can just pay a membership and get into the boats to go sailing without ownership. And that's something with a lot of community sailing centers starting throughout the United States and North America and the world, you see more and more of. So just making it easier to be part of the sport. And that also includes other segments such as parasailing, disabled sailing, as some might call it, which we have spent a lot of time developing our RS Venture Connect to be able to suit that aspect of the sport. So anything we can do there to promote that sort of accessibility.
And lastly, I guess our main ethos, we believe it should be inspiring. We believe our products set a new standard in how people perceive our sport and how people can get involved and be involved. We try to make boats that are simple, very, very usable, enjoyable, exciting, and ultimately inspiring. We believe that both as a boat manufacturer and a brand, and also sort of the clubs and the programs and the way people enter our sport, actually the environment that takes place is hugely important for the retention of people within sailing. So we're involved really in three sectors. We have day sailing. So day sailing, for those that just like to cruise, that's where my heritage as a sailor comes from. I learned to sail on a part of the UK called the Norfolk Broads, and it was all about cruising and adventures. And the day sailing market should not be overlooked, and is important for how young people and families, and maybe slightly the old generation, enjoy just simply being on the water in a small sailboat. We have tried to develop a range of boats which are really versatile, so families can have a boat that's right for them to enjoy within their family units. And those boats can carry weight. They can be used both in single-handed use or double-handed use or in family use. They can be used with symmetrical spinnakers or with asymmetrical kites. They can have options of things like trapeze, which is fun for the kids to do. They are super stable. They are self-draining. They have lots of key features, which means for a family purchase or those that just want to run a hire center, allow people to enjoy being on the water, our products are very, very versatile. And allow Todd to talk about the simplicity.
Yeah, and the word simple doesn't necessarily mean just a simple boat. What we really mean by that is simple entry to sailing. We have a lot of people that say, oh, I bought this boat and it takes me an hour and a half to set up. to go sailing, and I can't just drive it down to my local boat ramp and go sailing. So we've spent a lot of time trying to make boats that are fairly simple, but they offer the performance. It's one thing that RS's heritage offers. It originally started as racing sailboats. So we don't shy away from controls that may be a little bit more complicated, but offer more performance and more versatility in the boat. So you can see that the RS Zest in the middle there, which we've got, that's a very innovative boat with a lot of features, kick-up rudders, self-draining features, as John mentioned, a furling mainsail. We designed a mast gate, which is totally impenetrable and impossible to mess up. So that's been the great boat as a sunfish replacement for a family looking to go sailing on a lake. And if you look at YouTube, there's several families that will go out, from kids like in this picture. Actually, the two on the right are actually John's children there. And then to husband and wife, to husband by himself, you can go out with just the main. So that speaks to the versatility. You can see that yellow part that goes across the center is actually a bench. So a lot of husband and wife couples want to go out, and the wife doesn't want to switch side to side. She can sit there facing forwards. And that's where, we're just trying to make it easier and more versatile. That's really our philosophy behind the boat designs.
And, somebody very famous once quoted that it's easy to design something complicated. It's tricky to design something that's super universally user-friendly and simple. And that's where I think lots of our strengths lie within our in-house design team. For those of you who know me and expect me to have more hair than I have now, this is due to the fact we're on lockdown in the UK. And my son there, that's now 10, that photo was a few years ago, had a go at just trimming up the edges, and it got a little bit out of hand, hence why I now have no hair. So we took the whole lot off. Alfie did a good job. And lastly, as Todd said, our boat should be exciting. Everyone loves the thrill of being on the water, and versatile and simple does not have to mean boring. It can definitely also be exciting. And again, we think that we have a duty to try and make the on the water experience as exciting as it possibly can be. Okay, so programs. We've had the privilege over the last few years, especially in the US, to really work with many programs. Lots of our product range that we have designed within the last few years has been very much aimed at major programs across the globe. Boats like the Zest and the Quest, or the Terror and the Fever, very much are designed for these kind of programs. And again, there is no one program in this world that runs in the same way. There's no one program probably in the US that runs in the same way. They all have slight differences, and we believe it. Again, the purpose of a very versatile product is to try and work with the programs to suit their needs. And I think that's super important. And because of how things have been developed, some of these products have been hugely successful. So I guess there's three key points really. Todd, do you want to talk about the support that we offer for programs across the US?
Sure thing. And I'd also like to add, as John mentioned, we work with a lot of key programs throughout the US. UCI Marina Park out in Newport Beach, California, which is my background here. Sorry, it overlaps my face a little bit. I don't have a green screen, and I can't attribute that to my natural glow. But that they were the first RS Quest fleet in North America. And when we designed this boat, we designed it because there's a lot of 14 to 15 foot boats out there, and none of them really completely hit the nail on the head. And when we talked about family and day sailing in the last slide, there's a lot of overlap between those. So we sell the Quest and the Zest for family day sailing and programs. The program that bought UCI, that bought those 12 Quests out there, they were replacing another 14-foot boat that they couldn't get parts for, and they wanted more durability and less maintenance. So that's where, excuse me, they found the Quest to be really helpful, and we've delivered, I think, over 500 Quests throughout the US, throughout various programs in the last 5 years. And that's been revolutionary because there wasn't really a boat, like I said, that hit the nail on the head, that went all across the country, that ticked off so many boxes. The 420 is a great boat for youth racing. It can be a good boat for adult racing for certain programs. Like John said, no programs are the same. And this boat will fit in almost the same dimensions as a 420. So you can take it and use it for adult sailing as well. And it's great for family aspects, as we mentioned in the last slide. As far as support goes, RS Sailing is really, our number one strength and desire is to support the market. Warranties, making sure that people know how to sail their boats. We talk about the experience, making sure the boat is delivered in a fashion that they're happy and they understand the boat, and their first experience is going to be good, because that first experience is so important. And likewise, if someone goes out and breaks something, we're not perfect. We had an issue last summer where some faulty parts got out into the market, but we quickly got all the faulty parts replaced, and we talked to everyone, and we didn't have any upset customers at the end of the day. And we strongly believe in that, and in making sure people can stay on the water. And in order to do that, we have a really strong team in the UK. We have the rssailingpartsstore.com, which has full diagrams of all the boats and parts. But then we also signed up the best dealers and distributors throughout North America. So the way we work is we have 5 distributors throughout North America, so that when you buy a boat, they're being imported to common areas. So we have Zim Sailing in Rhode Island, we have KO Sailing in Texas, we have West Coast Sailing in Oregon, and we have Central Coast Sailing in Chicago, and then we have Folk Marine in Ontario and Toronto. And those are some of the best partners and best names you'll hear throughout the dinghy industry. And we chose to do that because we wanted to make sure that when you break something and you needed any kind of support, they will be there as your sailing consultants, as your warranty, anything you need. And we've also signed up dealers who work with the distributors to do the same. So we have a network of those throughout the country, and we make sure that that's their passion as well. So that's, really strong element of support. And if, we're always able, John is always willing to pick up his cell phone for a customer who, maybe has a concern, but generally we get very few of those, and we're very happy about that, very proud of that.
Thanks, Todd. Yeah, I think listening is really fascinating that the US market is different to Europe. I mean, you talk to a program in North America, in the US, and the word support or spare parts comes up very often and very quickly in any conversation. You have that same conversation in Europe, and the backup and the support isn't as valued as highly, and it's not really a factor. Maybe they take it for granted because they just expect it. I don't know, but I think we're certainly working heavily in the US market has definitely improved our service across other parts of the globe as well, and is how the rest of the team at RS listen and try and put into practice everything, all the feedback that we are receiving, and we've never been afraid of that. I think design for purpose is exactly what it is. With our training and our institutional boats and our program boats, whether it's the Terror and the Fever for sort of introductory into racing or training, or whether it's more core training boats like the Zest, the Quest, or the RS Venture, they've all been designed with a purpose and try to be as durable as possible to be right for those markets. And all of those products have really key features that are super important for programs to operate. And again, if you go to the rssailingparts.com website, you'll begin to understand what some of those features are. I mean, it sounds really, really simple, but as an example, an RS Quest has effectively 3 runners underneath it. So if you pull it onto a dock or you pull it onto a beach, it doesn't rock. It just sits there stable. It doesn't damage the performance. It's a super simple feature, but actually for the purposes of a training boat like the Quest, it makes it so much easier to use. If you want to run land drills, you can just take it off its dolly, pop it on the deck. It's not going to rock around all over the place, and the kids can learn to tack and jibe and what to do with their hands. Super, super simple. So we try and fill our boats with bag full of features to ensure that, again, the experience of learning to sail in a program or borrowing a boat in a program or learning to race in a program, it is as exciting and as simple and enjoyable as possible. So yet again, we are encouraging people to come back. The vast majority of our sort of training boats are rotor molded, which makes them very, very durable. We use a clever three layer system, which allows the boats to stay relatively light and hopefully as stiff as possible. So the RS Terror, the RS Fever, the RS Zest, and the RS Neo and the RS Quest are all rotor molded. The RS Venture, which is the slightly bigger boat, that is not rotor molded, mainly because when you get to a boat that size, to rotor mold a boat that big would be really hard, and the boat would get really heavy because of the lack of internal structure. So there are some limits around rotor molding, and I think what is key from our side is you're trying to develop the right boats made out of the right materials. And the fascination, but the way the Zest and the Quest are now manufactured would 20 years ago was unheard of. How parts of the mold work, no one thought that could be done with rotor molding technology. But we've been involved now since the early 2000s with rotor molding technology, and we've learned so much. And it's enabled us to push the boundaries of what boats can do and how they can be constructed and what features you can build in. And those features make them usable, and they also make them strong and give them longevity, which is ultimately the most important thing we all want. And yeah, the Zest and the Quest were basically both boats that were replacements for other rotor molded boats in our range, the Cuba and the Vision. And we took the brave decision, because redeveloping rotor molded boats are relatively expensive, that we would come to market with what we believe in an improved product. And the the Cuba and the Vision were fantastic boats, but the Quest and the Zest are simply better because of how we've now managed to develop them and gain greater understanding of the market. Okay, so our last factor is racing. I guess it's what RS is certainly in Europe is well known for. We started off as a racing brand with very UK centric products like the RS 200, the RS 600, and the RS 400. And over the last years, we've now grown that more into an international racing circuit with many classes which have full world sailing international status with world championships and international classes. RS is really good at building one design boats and building them in a way which makes them truly one design. So very similar weights, everything the same. And we were able to do that because we only build our boats in any one boat in one factory. So whether it's the RS Aero or the RS 500 or the RS 21, they're only made in one place, which allows us to keep real strict controls on the build process. Maybe 2-3 years ago now, maybe longer, we made a decision that we would move all of our production out of the Far East and back to the UK. RS started off by building all of its boats in the UK. For some years we did build some of them overseas, which the quality was good, but the cost and the keeping the high standard of quality was really hard and expensive. So we took some time out and we decided that we'd move everything back to the UK, and that only helped us to keep improving the quality, but also helps us really keep the one design nature. So I guess we see there's sort of 3 key factors to the racing that RS sailing offers. Firstly, it's inclusive. So you don't need to qualify if you want to come to an RS Worlds, whether that's an RS Terror Worlds or an RS Fever Worlds or an RS 500 Worlds or an RS Aero Worlds. All of our events are pretty much open and they're welcome to all. And we believe that certainly for younger sailors coming to participate in a World Championships is a fantastic experience and gives a young sailor more than the experience of just taking part in a World Championships. It's all about the international development the experience of being involved with an event like that, and ultimately what it does for them personally in their development. The rest of our classes, again, they're open to all, with the boats being hopefully as high performance as they can be, but yet as one design in nature as possible. So there isn't huge amounts of tweaking. It allows anyone to pick up a boat and hopefully go sailing in a boat that is as close as possible to the boats that are near the front of the fleet. So in theory, it's all about the sailor. It's not a race with checkbooks. It's not it's not a race for development. It's all one design, and it's purely about the sailor. And I think within the RS classes, like many classes that are very Corinthian orientated, there is so much knowledge sharing. With all of our championships, we're trying to get the best sailors to help the not so good sailors, so they all learn. And those events that we run, again, the whole point of them is they're inclusive, and we're passionate about the social element being as important as what goes on in the racing. And maybe Todd, you could talk a bit more about the lifestyle.
Yeah, and I think that these principles that we live by are things when we say dinghy sailing isn't dead, and we are trying to answer that question. These are the principles that we live by, and we think that helps sailing and shows that dinghy sailing is not dead. And that there's a lot of activity throughout different classes in North America and the world. The RS Terra, which is in that photo, we get about 200 boats at the Terra World Championships. We had 50 at the Terra North Americans last summer, and that's a growing class, mainly in California. There's about 200 of them in California, and maybe another 150 on the East Coast, but it's growing. And that's because we really want to enforce the lifestyle element of sailing. And that's where you all come in as sailors. Someone on the RS Aero class page yesterday asked, how we can help, or sailors can help us grow the classes. And that's just, being yourselves and being inclusive and including sailors as they come in. There's some really good classes. The Lightning class has started the youth grant program. And that's being inclusive and offering a lifestyle of, getting people to regattas and just having a family atmosphere. If you look at what was successful in the 80s and 90s, the lasers and the Hobies, and there were multiple, hundreds of boats on the beach at a regional regatta. And we don't have that anymore. And, it's probably unlikely to happen again. But that's where we believe like the pay to play model and some of the fleets that we have can regrow that and rebirth that, if you provide them a lifestyle and keep sailors entertained by providing that lifestyle. Because at the end of the day, it's important to go sailing, but it's just as important to have fun doing it all throughout the day, from showing up to leaving, and when you talk about it with your friends afterwards.
Yeah, thanks, Todd. I think there are classes other than RS classes who are doing an amazing job of this as well, and we look at them and admire them, and we try and learn from them, because whether it's some of the more European centric classes or some of your classes you still have in the US, there are some classes. But I think what we certainly see is, with some of the more historic classes that are successful, if you were to really drill deep and look at the average age of some of the sailors in those classes, it will only be going in one direction. And therefore, slight, modern boats to attract the younger generation is important. I think you will struggle to find a sailing club where the average age of the member is going down each year. That's why we admire clubs like Lakewood that have purchased a fleet of beautiful RS21s with a real intention to reach out to the younger generation to try and ensure that they're bringing the average age of the member down. And I think that applies to some class racing as well. So we believe our boats are modern, they are up to date. We try to use the most advanced technologies that are out there to make the boat super light or super easy to sail, and just super enjoyable, and is as user friendly as possible. we
John, if I
try and
could chime in on that, sorry, just the arrow part, the RS arrow, as you saw in the former slide, did win the Olympic selection by the selection committee, the equipment selection committee. And it won it by a large margin because it was a modern boat, because the whole experience on and off the water was just so great. The arrow all up weighs less than 80 pounds, 78 pounds. The hull weighs 68 pounds. So when you're going and you're trying to put it on your car at the end of the day, it's just more enjoyable, and moving it around the boat park and then sailing it. The writing moment's better. The carbon rig with a halyard, so you don't have to worry about putting a sleeve on. A lot of elements that just make it more enjoyable, and that was pointed out by the selection committee. And we respect that. The decision was made to go with something else because there's heritage there. But we do feel like to get people excited about sailing, you have to offer some modern equipment. The interesting thing about the United States is, we started in the 20s and 30s with cars, Ford developing the same models of cars and for years and years and years. And then World War II happened and we didn't come out with new models of cars. And then after that, the muscle cars started being introduced and everyone wanted a new modern car. And that's why we change car models every few years. The same thing has happened in the skiing industry, where parabolic skis started about 20 years ago. And there's a reason to buy new skis every few years to keep you excited about the sport. So we're not saying everyone has to go out and buy something new, but we think it rejuvenates energy and can increase the experience.
Thanks, Todd. And I think just going back to the Olympic selection process, which was on one level hugely emotional, but also from all those involved at RS, we took huge pride because as Todd pointed out, we won the selection process from the trials, which was run really well by World Sailing, and when they went through all the various criteria about what is important for an Olympic product or Olympic class or an Olympic boat, we ticked all the boxes, both for the aero as the boat and how it designs and the product, but also about RS as a business. And there's some really great quotes inside some of those documents, which we should share a bit more of that, because there's this one quote that it lays out that the aero was built to a higher quality than any of the other products that are out there. And that's not RS saying it, that's an independent panel. And we took real pride in that because, as I say, even though we didn't win the process overall, the politicians chose elsewhere, and we kind of understand the reasons for that. We felt like we won a moral battle because the aero was proved, and RS to prove was a more than capable partner to look after and manage an Olympic class. And I think the modern design is super important. And again, the inclusivity of it all, the lifestyle and the modernness, I believe sets our sport up for the future, because we need the next generation to be hugely involved. And no matter where you are in the world, we are all kind of battling with the same problem in sailing, is the participation levels until the ages of 13, 14, 15, maybe 16 are pretty good. But they don't start rising again until people are well into their 40s. And that kind of graph, which shows it dropping off and then rebuilding again, pretty much is the same in every country in the world. And we believe that modern ways of accessing our sport, whether it's through play and play sailing and modern products, will hopefully allow for the missing bit in the middle, the sort of 18 to 30-year-olds, to be able to access our sport and enjoy it a lot more. I think
specific to the U.S. side of things with the aero, it's been growing, and we have fleets throughout the country, and a lot of guys are traveling. But the reason they're doing that is because they see the lifestyle. They like going to Florida for the winter and sailing with their friends and going out afterwards. And we are trying really hard to replicate what we can in the U.S. We had the FIVA Worlds, the RS FIVA World in Clearwater, Florida a couple of years ago. And, we had music on the beach, and we had beach flags everywhere, trying to give it that festive atmosphere. John is kind of the brainchild behind the RS Games, which happened last year as part of our 25th anniversary. And there were over 1,000 boats over the course of a few weeks that came and raced, all RS boats. And that was not just because they were going to race, but they were going for the entire experience. And they obviously love their boats as well. So that's something that, we would love to have an RS game someday in the US. And that's definitely on the agenda to try to bring that atmosphere. I mean, it's probably pretty similar to what, the Hobies had in the 80s and 90s. And I have a ton of friends. I've sailed and raced Hobie Cats, and a ton of friends that stick with it to this day because of that lifestyle. So we want to try to bring some of that to the sport and create that.
Yeah, we utterly believe we're not selling a sport, that we're selling a lifestyle. And as Todd said, in 2018, we ran an RS Games in Weymouth in the UK, the Olympic sailing venue from 2012. We had almost 1,000 boats turn up over 2 weeks. We ran 13 championships back to back, all at the same time. We had 1,600 sailors take part in that event. And it was massive, and it was hugely enjoyable for all involved. And it was all about creating the festival and creating the atmosphere. And we certainly see that events at all levels need to have a festival kind of feel to them. So, Josh, do you want to talk about a bit about squaring the pyramid and where we think RS fits into it?
You mean Josh or me?
I mean Todd, sorry.
It's all right. I'm actually surprised you got this far without saying the wrong boat name or something. So the U.S. Sailing, John Pierce, the U.S. Sailing Youth Coordinator, amazing guy, lots of knowledge, really a lot of energy. Hopefully he's watching this. He's a big fan of this squaring the pyramid. And I don't know who actually created it. I'm sure it was a team within U.S. Sailing. But it really emphasizes what RS's beliefs are in our philosophy. And that's that, you start off as a beginner, intermediate, and then you can go the pathway of racing. And then you can get to national racing, and you can get to high performance racing and Olympics. And then you can do the other side where you do, beginning coastal cruising and intermediate coastal and offshore. But the bigger base, by getting as many people into sailing as we can, is what's going to create a bigger sport. And maybe they stay as a beginner or intermediate. There's no problem with that. That's where the biggest portion of our sport are people that are probably intermediate sailors that are just going cruising, whether it's on their day sailing small 12-foot dinghy or their 30-foot cruising boat. And another quote that John pointed out to me, which unfortunately is blocked, I think it was John Falby who said it, which the Danish sports expert, as many as possible, as long as possible, in the best environment possible. And I think that that's exactly what we try to do with RS, and we want to do more and more. The second part of the pyramid is everyone gets to sail is the biggest base, but as you narrow that niche down, just a few get to sail. So that speaks to the accessibility and trying to keep it as broad as possible. And that's where we really work really hard. So if you look at our pathway, for RS sailing, we have the boats that are program and day sailing family best suited for those purposes, which is your average beginner intermediate sailor. Now that can be an advanced sailor, someone who's advanced can enjoy going sailing on a zest for their entire life or a quest for their entire life. But there's a progression. Just like if you were to start on a Sunfish, maybe you end up sailing a laser and you go to the Olympics. But maybe you stay with the Sunfish. So there's a progression in sailing that you can choose to take or not take. And we encourage everyone, from youth sailors to adults, to try everything, from RS boats to every other type of boat out there, and see what's best suited for you, and then choose your own pathway. And there's a lot of support that U.S. Sailing, RS Sailing can do as sailing consultants. I mean, I've been on the phone multiple times today with people saying, what boat is right for me? And we're more than happy to have that conversation. In fact, that's my first question every time someone calls, and most of our dealers will do the same thing. If you call looking for an Arrow, we're going to talk to you. Well, is a Neo better for you? Is a Zest better for you? What's the best boat for you? And often our dealers will point you in the direction of a completely different boat, non-RS related, and that's fine. It's important to make sure that you're in the right boat and just enjoying the experience and staying in the sport. That's really what that means.
Thanks, Todd. And I think what I've seen and RS has seen over many years is certainly helping to square up the pyramid is within the RS range, there's a boat for everybody. And therefore, as people change, circumstances change, family life changes, there's certainly within the UK, we part exchange within our range. So therefore, very easy for people to change their boats as they move direction and making sure they're in the right boat for the right time. We have many customers that from in the early days were great RS 400 or RS 200 racers. And now we're selling them Terrors and Fevers because their kids now are grown up. And it's almost gone full circle. We have one customer who brought one of the first 200s 20 years ago, and not so long ago brought another 200 for his daughter because she had gone through the whole system. And, you know, I think by making the right boats available, we, in some way, we can help begin to allow more people to enjoy our sport. As I say, we're not the only factor. We know that. You need amazing classes, you need amazing sailing clubs, and we need fantastic programs. And we are one part of the equation. And you need good federations like US Sailing, like the RWA in the UK, who can guide the sport. As some of you will know, we're involved with the US Sailing, SailGP Inspire program. We are one of their key partners. We supply them with some catamarans to help them run that at every SailGP event. In a couple of weeks' time, we should have been in San Francisco, but unfortunately that event's been cancelled. And then we should have come to New York, but unfortunately that event's cancelled, which is hugely disappointing for all those involved. And we love being a part of the SailGP Inspire program. We do more than just supply them boats. We get hands-on and stuck in and really help them deliver a program which does inspire a bunch of kids. And I think it was fascinating getting Tom Herbert Evans, who runs the Inspire program for SailGP, gave us his fantastic quote. And it basically just says, from RS Sailing's core, they are driven by passion for getting people into our sport and recreation of sailing. They have a boat for every ability and a global network that ensures we can offer life-changing experience in every corner of our world. And I think that really sums up well what RS is all about. Yes, we are a commercial body that exists to build and sell boats and generate profit. But we fully understand that we work in a funny industry where volunteers and not-for-profit organizations all kind of collide, and we don't always get it right, but we do our best to kind of work within that environment in a professional and friendly way where commerciality doesn't necessarily drive everything. And from my point of view, over the last 20 something years, it's been a real privilege to be a part of something which I think is quite unique. I guess I'm hoping that Josh has got some questions for us.
Yeah, I think we got a lot of questions here. Thanks, John and Todd, for taking us through that. And John, if you want to hit stop sharing, we'll end up with a kind of a big screen with me, you, and Todd here. Thanks so much again for sharing all of that information. I think it was really great. We do have a lot of great questions. I'm going to start out with a question for Todd, and it's kind of surrounding the Sea Sailors program as well. And we know that the RS FIVA is making waves in the U.S. With the Sea Sailors program, and in general, kind of fleets popping up all over the place. And people are wondering, it's a great transition boat for after the Opti, but what kind of boats, maybe not in the RS line, would the FIVA kind of help prepare you for?
I mean, the easy question is everything, but and that's realistic. But I've seen the progression. I'm so lucky to have been involved with RS for 5 years now and see the progression. Long Island Sound, there's about 200 FIVAs just in Connecticut and New York, and I've seen the progression of the fleet with sailors, especially young girls who would have been intimidated by a larger boat and have come up and said, "You saved my child from the sport." They were ready to quit. They were intimidated. So I get a lot of times, the FIVA is a great little skiff. It's a great intro to 29ers. And obviously anything past that, but it's also still a great boat for teaching for 420s. It's a great boat to teach tuning. People look at it and say it's a big plastic boat, but the mast is more bendable and tunable than most boats that are in the U.S. market. So when I started doing clinics in Long Island Sound a couple of years ago, I started talking about mast rake and mast bend, and went over a lot of kids' heads. And I talked about spinnaker dropping, and it was amazing to see them take it on. So there's definitely an easy progression to the future boats. I think 29ers and 420s are the most standout, but anything in that category works really well. And then they've learned the asymmetrical apparent wind sailing for other higher performance boats as well.
And maybe just as a follow up with that, Todd, and I know we'll probably get into the starboard port a little bit later in the month with some Steeple Sailors updates, but maybe you could give us a quick update on RS's involvement with the Steeple Sailors program.
Yeah, so was it a year and a half ago, John and I were sitting across from Jack Earhart, and John was telling him about a program in Denmark and in Norway, where they had a bunch of boats because they saw the loss of sailors, specifically in the age range that the FIVA caters to. So we went on this venture to try to save sailing in that age range, but specifically among socioeconomic and diverse climate of areas throughout the U.S., the underserved population, to try to get more of a base, exactly like we talked about squaring the pyramid, and getting more of those sailors involved. So far, 120 boats have been delivered. Not all to the program. There's 48 which just landed or are about to land really recently. But we've gotten programming starting in Baltimore, Chicago, and San Francisco. Unfortunately, it was throughout the end of last year, so there wasn't a ton of programming, and now some of the programs, especially the new centers, are on lockdown. But there's definitely a lot of excitement, and I was part of the Baltimore demo day, and I was just blown away by the different caliber of sailors that came out for the first time and experienced the FIVA, and it's just really rewarding to see that grow. And we're happy to support it, be a partner with U.S. Sailing, and hopefully we can replicate that model throughout other programs that maybe aren't part of the 120 boats, and continue to make that effort to grow the base of the pyramid.
Cool, thank you. This next question is for John. Well, I think it's for John. I'm kind of filtering these questions who I think might be best to answer them, but John, you mentioned kind of the progression from the vision to the quest, and kind of how you went along with that. And this question is from John Pageant at Renton Sailing Center. They loved their RS Vision. They bought a Quest after the Vision got discontinued, and their sailors prefer the Vision, especially on the race nights. And he asked if there's any chance of bringing it back.
Well, look, we certainly, for those programs that offer any form of racing or slightly higher end performance, that's what the Vision did really, really well. From a global market point of view, unfortunately, it's a smaller market than an out and out training boat like the Quest. To put it in sort of boat sales, we sell 5 times more Quests a year than we ever did with Visions. So from a commercial point of view, it's a better boat. But hey, we still have the Vision mold. It's still sat in a container. We couldn't bring ourselves, and if never say never in our world. I've said that once or twice and lived to regret it. So we will certainly work with any program that, it wasn't a bad boat. It was lovely. It was almost too lovely because it went above the market we were aiming it for it. If that makes sense, it was a little bit tweaky to sell. And the Quest is certainly easier and more stable and more appropriate for that training environment. But as I say never, and drop us a line, and if there's requirement, we'll see what we can do.
Well, I think you got a customer over there at Renton Sailing Center if you want to build another one. So talking about the Quest, a question comes in from Charlie Case. If you could make the Quest any lighter, is there anything within the mold or the build that you can make it a little bit lighter? She mentions that it's a little heavy, that it takes multiple instructors to pull them up onto a floating dock and a couple more to pull up on a dolly. Can you talk a little bit about the build of the Quest and any type of variations you can do within that?
I think it's tricky. Rotor molded boats, it's quite hard to reduce weight significantly. You have no internal structure. I mean, in one sense, the Quest is a step forward because any similar boat would be, we believe, built in a slightly different way, would be even heavier again. And we are constantly fighting the battle between longevity and strength versus weight. And with rotor molded boats, those two things, with the technology that's available to us right now, are directly proportional. So the design of the boat helps you build, and the way it's constructed helps you develop strength into the boat. So every angle, every corner, the various moldings are in the floor, all the shape help build the strength. And then the other way is simply how thick the material is and where that material is in the boat. So we understand why certain organizations would love the Quest to be a bit lighter. We would, but that would be a compromise against the stiffness and the longevity of the boat. And it's a challenge. I suspect in coming years, the rotor molding materials will develop, and they already are developing, apart from they're not quite commercialized yet or productionized yet, which will allow us to build a Quest in a lighter way. But the technology isn't quite there yet.
Would you say that that's the biggest benefits of the polyethylene build, the durability and the longevity of the boats?
I think it's durability, longevity, and cost, because it helps bring the unit price down. Durability is a massive factor.
I could also chime in on that real quick.
Yeah, please do, Todd.
Sorry. Yeah, a lot of times we also, get that comment from programs that maybe are launching on a beach with soft sand, or there's limitations to how they're launching the boat, and that's something that definitely reach out to us. We work closely with Dynamic Dollies, who offer beach wheels, and that makes it a lot easier. They're bigger wheels to pull up the beach, and we can have other creative thoughts, but the Quest does have the rails that are rolled over, so you can actually get your hand underneath it to pull it up or to lift it, which is another reason why we did that over the Vision. So there are elements that we try to do for that, but we're always open for more feedback as well.
Great. Todd, I got a question for you in terms of a recommendation needed. Recommended model for a small lake weekender, 1 to 2 occupants, sporty but stable. Kind of think I know what your answer is going to be, but go for it.
I think it really depends. I mean, there's some, I think you probably need a little bit more information. Sporty but stable. Are you talking fiberglass or polyethylene? Depending on what durability and cost you're looking at. My favorite boat out of the RS range is the 500. It's a great boat for 1 or 2 people with a spinnaker and single trapeze. The 200 is very popular for 2 people in the UK, and they get hundreds of them racing out every weeknight. But if you're looking for a plastic boat, I really think we probably need some more information. On the Quest is a great boat for 2 larger adults. For 2 kids, the FIVA is really good, and if you're looking for something a little less performance, the Zest is really good.
So Todd, that question was from Paul WG, and if he's listening, if he's still on, how can he get in touch with you for the further recommendations of the information?
Yeah, my email is Josh Toso. No, I'm just kidding. My email is todd@rssailing.com, and shoot me an email, and we can connect you with a local dealer. You can try boats, but definitely, talking about some other qualifying questions to see what best boat is for you. Maybe it's not an RS boat.
Yeah.
Just good to talk to you.
Heaven forbid. I mean, surely
Right.
not.
I mean, that was a great point that you made earlier in the presentation too, and something that I've at least experienced with the guys from RS is that they really want to make sure that your sailing experience is the best possible, whether it's in their boat or something else, because the likelihood that you have a good experience means that you probably are going to end up in an RS boat at some point down the line. John, I got a follow-up question for you, because I did have a question for both of you, but Todd just kind of answered it with the RS 500. John, what's your favorite RS boat? I know they're all your babies, but what's your favorite?
I think I'd look at this in three ways. My favorite boat in terms of work life has been the RS Fever. I've been involved with it from day one. It's been a part of my life like you wouldn't believe. I've been involved with every world championship, every European championship, and I've helped with a really cool bunch of really amazing individuals and volunteers grow that. So the Fever stands out because it's kind of my baby. We now employ some staff at RS that used to race Fevers, which makes me smile and makes me feel pretty old. I race a boat called, I love the RS 500. I race a boat called an RS 400 on a Wednesday night at my home club. We have a pretty healthy fleet. I love sailing the 400. It's 2-person hiking boat. You kind of don't have to lean that hard. And we have some really great racing around my harbour, which is Poole Harbour. But on pure looks, I love the 21 as the RS 21 as well. So and hopefully that boat's got big days ahead of it. So yeah, there's a few that stand out for me.
Such a political answer, danced around every boat that you make.
Yeah, well, there's more than that.
I got another question for you, John. You and Todd hit on kind of the quality of your dealer and distributor network, especially here in the U.S. and the likes of Zim and West Coast Sailing, Central Coast Sailing, and KO, and kind of getting everyone on board. I'd like to know kind of how you went about building your RS team and kind of bringing on, quality people and within the industry like Todd or Dan Jaspers and others, and kind of how you went about that to build the RS team that we've kind of got to know and love.
I think we have very much had the philosophy at RS, and in my junior years at RS, I probably should have been fired several times and managed to scrape through by the skin of my teeth and probably a cheeky smile. I think we have always stuck with people who are passionate. I think we have always had the approach that any walk of life, anywhere in the world, there is somebody that's better at what we do than we do, or there's somebody that's better at doing another job. And you can spend forever trying to find that person, and you can waste a whole bunch of time, and you can not progress the game. So Alex and I that run the business, our general philosophy, and this came from Nick and Martin, who started off running the business, is we find people who are super passionate and work with them and help develop them. We try and run an organization where someone can stand up and put their hand up and say, I cocked up, I've made a mistake, I did this wrong, help me put it right. And they may get shouted at because I have bad days. But we try and work with them and develop them. And I experienced that in my junior days at RS, and I hopefully that philosophy will continue into the future. And I don't think our dealer network's any different. They're all very different across the globe. They all have strengths, they all have weaknesses like all of us. And we try and bring out the best in all of them. They learn from us and we learn from them. And I think that the core team at RS, both from a staff and a network point of view, it's just a collective group of people who are passionate about our sport. And that's the most primary thing, because if you don't love our sport, there is easier ways to go and earn some money, is the reality, and you've got to have a love for it, and that's the most important thing. So I don't think we've got any magic ingredient apart from we try and stick by people, and we try and listen to them, and we try and live off passion, because that's what we are. We're passionate sailors that love what we do.
Yeah, great principles. So we got time for just maybe two more questions. Got one that came in from Dave Reed, editor of Sailing World. I'm going to throw this over to Todd. Dave asks, What's the best line to develop and grow family sailing or family racing? He actually asks, family racing.
Sorry, the best line as in like pathway or best?
I think he means like best line of boats, like line of product line.
I mean, wouldn't that just, I mean, can I say
Well,
RS? Is that? I mean,
which boat of yours?
that's okay. That's what I thought he meant, but I was just
I
clarifying.
mean, I'm reading it, but I think I'm reading into what he's talking about.
Yeah, thanks, Dave Reed. We appreciate that. Probably going to cost us later. No, I think that, you know, the Terra is a great boat. It starts with, you know, with an Opti-age sailor, and you know, I love the Terra because it basically can't get stuck in the wind. For every instructor out there that's, you know, had their Opti sailors stuck in the wind for 45 minutes crying, you know, that's, the Terra is great. And then they can progress either, as we talked about, the pathway, they can progress into the Zest or the FIVA, and then they can progress into the Quest or something faster than the FIVA. So, you know, personally, I think our best, you know, and our widest base is the Terra, Zest, Quest, and then maybe you find a racing boat. But the RS FIVA is a great way if you just want to go straight to the racing route. So be my answer. Look at the pathway document. We're happy to share that if you want to see it.
And he did clarify which of the RS boats. So John, go ahead.
Well, I just like that in the UK, where we have a slightly different circuit, and I don't want this to be UK centric, you know, in terms of family racing, the RS 200, we have mum and dads racing in a boat together, and we have kids racing in boats together. It's a double-handed for slightly smaller adults, kind of, you know, 150 pounds to 160 kind of pounds weight per individual. And that is hugely successful in the UK. And also we now have aero families. And I think this is a bit like how some fish families are. I know a family in the UK that between the mum and the dad and the two kids, they own 4 aeros, and they go aero sailing because they do it as a family. There's 3 rigs and it suits all of them, and they love it. They absolutely love it. They go off to Lake Garda to a European Championships together as a family, and the mum and the dad absolutely adore the fact that their 2 kids that are now run off to university are wanting to spend a week with them.
We have like that in the we have people like that, families like that in the US, and the Gloucesters on the West Coast who have into the Terra FIVA world, and now they own multiple arrows, and the Solniks who have the FIVA and the arrows. And yeah, I mean, that's coming here. And you know, one thing we didn't really talk about was the UK centric dinghy lifestyle, and we would love to bring that more here. I mean, it's very challenging, but that's something that, you know, as John has hit on a lot, we can do.
So another question came in that I'm kind of curious about too, so I'm going to ask it from Henry Millette. Do you know if you can throw a Cuba jib on a Zest? He knows a program that has been speculating about that.
Probably,
Henry.
Probably is the answer to that. John at rssailing.com, and I'll reply via email. Don't know. Great. I can't imagine it. I don't know, but I suspect you probably could.
And just as a shout out, we do have a bunch of your distributors and dealers on here as well that are very complimentary of you guys. Bob Adams says great haircut. John Partridge, I think you match him now. And Todd, he also says you're lucky that he got you the job way back in the day. So just so you know,
he was a tough first boss, let me tell you.
Last question that I have, and you know, you may not know yet, but obviously you guys hit on it. The Aero did quite well in the 2024 trials, you know, for various different reasons, was not selected by the selection committee. Any information about the Aero making a bid for 2028?
Look, as I said earlier, and I kind of wish my colleague Alex, who runs the organization with me, I'd kind of do the more sales and commercial side of it. He looks after all of our development, and the Aero was very much his baby. He was hugely proud of what we achieved in the build in the selection process this time last year. I think that there's a obviously having an Olympic class could be seen as the prize possession for any small boat brand. I think you have to be careful what you hope for and wish for, because running Olympic classes is tough, really tough, and is not easy. Todd will have experience of that through NACRA. You know, we have good friends that work at Ovington Boats, and we know how challenging it can be. And people often say to us, got to be careful what you wish for. We're probably a glutton for punishment, and we probably, if the opportunity presents itself, have another go. But it's not a given. We have a brilliant brand, we have brilliant dealers, we have brilliant products, we run fantastic events, and our network, we're in control of it. And the moment you hand some control to other organizations that won't get named, that will have a massive influence on that product, has got to be worrying when some of those organizations aren't exactly amazing. So we would probably have another go, but it would be, I'm not sure if Alex and I's emotions could take it again, but we probably would, even though, I don't know. I hope that explains how we kind of feel.
Yeah. As you said, glutton for punishment, but obviously it did well. So we look forward to possibly seeing that. So unfortunately, that's the last bit of time that we have today. We went a little bit over, but we definitely want to thank John and Todd for joining us today. It was a great presentation, and thank you to all the viewers who tuned in. And again, if you missed any of this, it will be on the Starboard portal in a moment, a couple hours after this, uploaded there for playback if you've missed any of it, or for people that are watching it later. So make sure to tune in and take a look at it. And if you want to see any more of these great boats, or learning more about RS Sailing and what they're doing, you can head over to rssailing.com to learn more. Feel free to reach out to Todd at rssailing.com, or John at rssailing.com. It's Jon, not JOHN, to make sure you get to them. And feel free to drop them a line and ask them any questions, even if you want to shoot the breeze about One Design Sailing or RS boats or whatever it is. I'm sure they'd be happy to answer your questions, or just kind of talk to you about sailing in general. Again, if you enjoyed today's session or any of the other sessions that we've put on, please help us and support our efforts to build a community of active and engaged sailors through Starboard Portal by purchasing or renewing a U.S. Sailing membership. We have a lot of great content coming up in the schedule for next week. We're really excited about it, so stay tuned on Mondays. We post out the schedule for next week. We got a special surprise for Friday afternoon for you next week there. And thanks to U.S. Sailing members, we're able to adapt and evolve to better serve the sailors in challenging times like this with content like this. So please visit ussailing.org/membership to join or renew U.S. Sailing today. Thanks again to John, Todd. Thank you all for joining, and I hope you all have a happy Friday.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Josh.
Cheers, y'all.